The gentle sound of ocean waves filled the air as Ethan Carter stepped out of his sleek black car and onto the white stone path of the Golden Coast Resort. Palm trees swayed in the breeze, and the resort staff practically tripped over themselves to take his luggage. He gave them a polite nod before striding confidently into the grand lobby. He wasn't here for the view, the sun, or the ridiculous tropical drinks everyone mentioned in the group chat. Ethan Carter was here for one reason: to be the best man at his childhood best friend's wedding. Michael Johnson was like a brother to him, and if Michael wanted a beach wedding with piña coladas and awkward dance floors, then Ethan would show up, even if he hated everything about weddings. He approached the marble reception desk and took off his sunglasses. "Reservation for Ethan Carter," he said in a firm voice. The young woman behind the desk smiled as she typed on the computer. "Yes, Mr. Carter, welcome to Golden Coast. There has been a small issue with the room assignments." Ethan's eyebrow arched. "Define issue." "Well, due to a last-minute overbooking, we had to consolidate some guests. Your suite has been paired with another from the wedding party." "Excuse me?" "You're sharing a suite, sir, with Ms. Chloe Davis." Ethan blinked. Emily's best friend, the maid of honor. He nodded curtly. He ran a hand through his thick, dark hair. "Is there no other room available?" "I'm afraid we're completely booked for the weekend, sir." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Fine. The keycard, please." He snatched the card, muttered a thank you, and headed for the elevator. Sharing a room with some kind of Instagram influencer was not on his itinerary. He vaguely remembered Chloe from Michael's engagement party. Curvy, loud, always laughing. She was the complete opposite of the women he usually spent time with, model thin, polished, quiet. The elevator doors opened to the top floor, and he walked down the hall to suite 604. The door clicked open, and there she was. Chloe Davis was wearing a silk robe, curls piled on her head, a clay mask spread across her cheeks, and absolutely no shame. "Oh, great! You're the mystery roommate. I knew it. Emily warned me, said you'd be grumpy about this. You're proving her right." Ethan dropped his bag on the stand with a sigh. "I'm not grumpy, I'm structured," Chloe snorted. "Sure, let's go with that. You take structure, I'll take spontaneity. Works for me." Ethan looked around the suite. One bed, king size, of course. "I'll have them make up the sofa," he muttered, taking off his blazer. "No need. I already called dibs on the couch. My back is used to weird sleeping arrangements," she said lightly. "Besides, I snore." He froze. "You're kidding." She winked at him. "Only slightly." Ethan retreated to the bathroom to change, unsettled by the situation. When he returned, she had lit a candle and was humming along to an indie playlist. The suite smelled like vanilla and citrus. Her suitcase was open, spilling clothes and accessories all over her side of the room. His things were still neatly packed. Chloe was lounging on the sofa with her phone, scrolling and laughing to herself. "What is it you do exactly?" he asked, unable to help himself. She looked up. "Body-positive fashion influencer and part-time speaker on self-esteem and wellness. So Instagram, TEDx, Spotify, YouTube, and a little modeling here and there." Ethan crossed his arms. "That's surprisingly entrepreneurial." "Why, thank you, Mr. Carter. Was that a compliment?" "It was a surprise." "Same goes for your world," he smirked. "Touché." Later that night, after the rehearsal dinner and welcome cocktails, Ethan returned to the room late, slightly drained from the small talk and even smaller appetizers. Chloe was already there, sprawled on the bed in an oversized T-shirt, flipping through a bridal magazine. Ethan stood in the doorway, unsure where to go. "Are you really going to take the sofa?" she asked, sitting up. "I thought you claimed it." "I changed my mind. My back isn't what it used to be after heels and 5 outfit changes today." He hesitated. "We are not both sleeping in the bed." "Why not?" "It's huge. We're adults, and I don't bite unless provoked." Ethan's jaw tightened. "It's not appropriate." Chloe rolled her eyes. "We're not in Victorian England. Relax." In the end, they both took opposite sides of the bed, back to back, a fortress of pillows built down the middle. 10 minutes passed in silence. Do you always breathe that loud when you sleep? Chloe whispered. I'm not asleep. Oh, good. I thought I was lying next to Darth Vader. Ethan couldn't help it. He let out a quiet laugh. Chloe smiled in the darkness. See, you're not as cold as you act. He turned slightly, catching a glimpse of her profile in the moonlight filtering through the sheer curtains. They had given that TED Talk that had been viewed by over 2 million people on YouTube. Their story of personal and professional transformation had inspired hundreds of couples to write to them, telling them how they had found the courage to combine their own personal and professional passions. But more than all that, they had learned to love each other without reservation, to support each other without condition, to be vulnerable without fear. You know what I realized today, Chloe said, leaning back against Ethan's chest as they felt the baby move between them. What? That my whole life I was waiting for someone to really see me. All those past relationships, all those men who made me feel like I was too much. I was looking for validation in all the wrong places. And now? She turned in his arms to look at him directly. Now I know that true love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who loves you completely as you are, and who grows with you towards who you want to be. It's about finding someone who sees your potential before you. Even see it yourself. Ethan kissed her softly, savoring the words she had just spoken. I couldn't have said it better myself. Chloe smiled, stroking his cheek. And you? What have you learned in these 2 years? Ethan took his time answering, looking out at the city spread before them. Charleston had been just an occasional business stop in his previous life. Now, it was his home, the place where he had built the life he truly wanted. I've learned that the control I thought I had over my life was an illusion. I've learned that the best things that have ever happened to me came from moments when I stopped trying to control everything and just surrendered to the moment. He looked at her with intensity. I've learned that vulnerability isn't showing weakness. It's showing trust. Trust that the person you love isn't going to hurt you intentionally, and that if they accidentally do, you're going to work together to fix it. The baby kicked strongly just then, making them both laugh. Someone agrees with you, Chloe joked. And I've learned, Ethan continued, placing both hands on her belly, that when you truly love someone, when you build something real with them, you're not afraid of the future. You're excited to live it. They stood there in silence for a moment, feeling the baby move, listening to the sounds of the waking city, breathing in the fresh morning air that smelled of flowers and coffee. Ethan, Chloe said softly. Yeah? Do you ever think about that? First night? At the resort? He laughed. All the time. Especially when I see you organizing your side of the closet like a Category 5 hurricane. She swatted him playfully. Hey, my organizational system is perfectly functional. Your organizational system defies the laws of physics, my love. Chloe laughed, leaning back against him again. But seriously, sometimes I can't believe it all started because someone messed up a hotel reservation. You know what I think? Ethan said, wrapping his arms more tightly around her. What? I think the universe conspired to bring us together. I think we were meant to meet one way or another. Maybe not at that specific resort, maybe not in that specific room, but somewhere, sometime. Chloe lifted her head to look at him. You really believe that? Absolutely. Think about it. Of all the weddings in the world, Michael chose that resort. Of all the resorts in Florida, Emily decided to have her wedding there. Of all the weekends in the year, they chose that specific one. Of all the rooms in the hotel, they put us in the same suite. He stroked her hair. That's too many coincidences to just be luck, Chloe. I think the universe knew we needed to find each other. Chloe felt her eyes well up with tears. What if I had decided not to go to the wedding? Emily begged me for weeks to come. I almost didn't go because I had so much work. But you went, and I almost sent Robert in my place because I hate weddings. But you didn't. No, didn't, because deep down something was telling me I had to be there. They kissed softly, a kiss filled with gratitude for all the small decisions that had led them to this moment. Chloe, Ethan said when they parted, Yeah? There's something I never told you about that first night. She looked at him curiously. What? When you said you snored, I knew you were lying. Chloe blinked. How? Because I stayed awake all night listening to you breathe. Your breathing was soft, steady, perfect. You never snored for a second. And why didn't you say anything? Ethan smiled with an expression that was part shyness, part mischief. Because I liked having an excuse to be close to you. I liked having a reason to share the bed without it seeming like I was trying something. Chloe's jaw dropped. Ethan Carter, are you telling me you were an accomplice to my lie? Absolutely, and I'd do it again. She laughed, hitting him playfully on the chest. I can't believe you never told me. Well, now you know. Chloe looked at him with shining eyes. You know what else I never told you? What? That first morning when I woke up and found you sleeping next to me. It was the first time in years I had woken up feeling completely safe. Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe, like I had finally found my home. Ethan felt his heart swell. Really? Really? There was something about the way you were sleeping, so relaxed and peaceful, so different from the tense, controlled man I met in the lobby. It was like you had let down all your defenses, and it made me realize I had let down mine too. He held her tighter. You know, Chloe, I've been thinking about writing a book. A book? About what? About us. About how two completely different people can find each other and build something beautiful together. About how real love isn't like in the movies, where everything is perfect from the first moment, but about how it is in real life, where you have to choose to love each other every day. Chloe sat up, excited. Ethan, that's an incredible idea. We could write it together. You'd do that with me? Are you kidding? I'd love to. We could tell our real story with all the stumbles and mistakes and beautiful moments. We could help other people understand that true love is work, but work that's worth it. They spent the next hour talking about the book, about what stories they would include, about what lessons they had learned that were worth sharing. They talked about the importance of communication, about learning to fight constructively, about maintaining individuality within a relationship. You know what the main message of the book would be? Chloe asked. What? That you don't have to be perfect to deserve love, that you don't have to change yourself completely to find your person. You just have to be willing to grow, to communicate, and to choose love, even when it's hard. Ethan nodded. And that sometimes the best things in life come when you least expect them, when you're prepared for something totally different. The sun was fully up now, filling their balcony with golden light. Chloe was feeling sleepy again, one of the effects of pregnancy that still surprised her. Let's go inside, Ethan suggested. You and the baby need to rest. Chloe murmured, letting him help her to her feet. But first coffee, of course. You wouldn't be you without your morning coffee. As they walked inside, Chloe stopped and looked back at the balcony where they had spent the last hour. Ethan, yeah? Thank you. For what? For seeing me, for loving me, for building this beautiful life with me, for showing me that I deserve all of this. Ethan stopped too, took her face in his hands and looked her straight in the eyes. Chloe, my love, you don't have to thank me for loving you. Loving you is the greatest privilege of my life. It's the easiest, most natural thing I've ever done. He kissed her softly. Now come on, let's get some coffee and breakfast, and then you can take a nap while I work on some calls. Are you working from home today? I'm working from home every day until the baby is born. I already talked to Robert. He can handle the in-person meetings for a few weeks. Chloe smiled. You know what? I think our baby is going to have the best dad in the world. And the best mom in the universe. As they entered their home, filled with light and love and the promise of a new life growing. Between them, Chloe reflected on how different her life was now compared to just 3 years ago. 3 years ago, she was alone, struggling to keep her non-profit afloat, convinced she would have to choose between love and her professional dreams. Now she had both, in abundance, and she had learned that the best things in life come when you stop trying to control everything and just open yourself up to the possibilities. This story isn't just about them. It could also be about you. There was something wild and warm about her, a kind of bold softness. She was nothing like the women from his world of corporate boardrooms and rigid expectations. "I'm not cold," he said quietly. "I'm careful. That sounds lonely." Ethan paused. No one had ever called him lonely before. Before he could answer, Chloe sighed and turned over. "Good night, Mr. Best Man." "Good night, Ms. Maid of Honor." He lay there for a long time, listening to her breathing become steady. The scent of her vanilla candle still hung in the air. For the first time in years, he found himself wide awake in a bed because of a woman, and not for the usual reasons. Something told him this wedding weekend was going to be far more complicated and far more unforgettable than he ever expected. She thought that was the worst night of her life, but she can't imagine what's coming next. Ethan Carter stood at the breakfast buffet, staring at a suspiciously colorful fruit parfait. He was not a breakfast guy. He was a protein, shake and black coffee kind of guy. But apparently a destination wedding meant mandatory participation in every scheduled group event, including the bridesmaids' brunch, which he was already regretting. He scanned the beachside restaurant terrace until his eyes landed on her. Chloe Davis, sitting at a corner table, laughing loudly with a mimosa in one hand and sunglasses perched on her head. Her bright yellow dress hugged every curve, and her hair was piled in a topknot that made her look like a walking ray of sunshine, a very distracting ray of sunshine. She saw him instantly and waved dramatically as if she hadn't shared a bed with him just hours before. "Look who's out of the dungeon," she called out teasingly, announcing his arrival. He sighed, grabbed a cup of coffee and reluctantly headed over. A few other bridesmaids were already at the table, sipping drinks and eyeing him with curiosity. Chloe joked that he looked tense, and he replied dryly that someone had just offered him a blueberry pancake. She smiled and told him to sit down and enjoy the view, or at least pretend he wasn't planning his escape. Ethan sat next to her, careful not to let their arms touch. "Do you ever turn it down a notch?" she asked. "Does your energy ever stop interfering with my Wall Street aura?" He shot back. A few of the women laughed, and Ethan fought the urge to smile. An hour later, Ethan was putting on his sunglasses and heading back to the resort when Chloe ran up beside him, barefoot, sandals in hand. "You survived," she commented. "3 cups of coffee and ignoring half the conversation helped," he replied. "Are you always this rigid? Or do weddings just bring it out in you?" "I'm not rigid. I'm just selective." She tilted her head. "Selective? You translate that to guarded like Fort Knox. I'm not a mystery to be solved. I hate puzzles," she teased, then admitted, "I love them." They walked in silence for a moment as the wind played with her dress and his tie, the ocean glittering nearby. Casually she mentioned having Googled him the night before. He wasn't surprised. She commented on his wealth, and he added that he was also more punctual. She laughed and gave him a touche. Back in the suite, Chloe collapsed on the sofa, claiming the mimosas hit her hard. Ethan loosened his tie and took off his blazer, saying he had calls to make because business doesn't pause for weddings. She stared at him and asked if he ever relaxed. "I'm relaxing right now," he stated. "You're standing with your arms crossed and scowling at your phone," she pointed out. He blinked and looked down, conceding her point. A few hours later, the group gathered for a game of beach volleyball. Ethan planned to skip it until Michael dragged him along by the collar. Of course, Chloe was already there, in high-waisted shorts and a sports top, stretching dramatically as she energized her team. "Ethan!" she yelled playfully. "Are you on our team?" He groaned, but agreed. 2 minutes in, Ethan realized he hadn't played since college. 10 minutes in, Chloe spiked the ball right at him and yelled for him to keep up. It was infuriating. It was also exhilarating. Afterward, sunburnt and breathless, he collapsed next to her on a beach chair. "You tried to murder me," he accused. "I tried to wake you up," she corrected. "Congratulations. I'm fully conscious and possibly concussed." She laughed and passed him a water bottle, noting that he wasn't so bad when he stopped. Being himself. "Who do you think I am?" he asked. She looked at him softly. "Someone who's afraid to loosen their grip." Someone who's more than they let on. He shot back that she didn't even know him. Not yet, she replied. Their gazes held, the moment stretching between them until someone shouted their names and broke the spell. That evening, they dressed for the rehearsal dinner. Ethan wore navy slacks and a crisp white shirt. Chloe emerged in a wine-red bodycon dress that made his jaw tighten. He cleared his throat and commented on the dress. She raised an eyebrow, interpreting it as either a compliment or a warning. He confirmed it was both. She smiled and grabbed her clutch, inviting him to stir up the boring dinner with her. The rehearsal dinner was held under glowing lanterns in the resort's garden courtyard. Wine flowed, speeches were made, and people danced under the stars. Ethan stood to the side until Chloe found him and questioned why he always lurked in corners. He replied that people like her did enough socializing for everyone. She leaned in and asked him to dance. He resisted, claiming he didn't dance. She didn't believe him. He admitted he didn't dance well. She insisted it didn't matter and pulled him onto the dance floor. The music was slow and sultry. Her hand slipped into his. The other rested on his shoulder. They moved cautiously at first, him stiff, her fluid, but soon they found a rhythm. Her body fit against his like they had done this before. "You're staring," she murmured. "I'm trying to figure you out," he admitted. "Good luck." He leaned in slightly and noted that she liked to challenge him. "I like to make you feel something," she said. His breath hitched. "Do you feel something?" he asked. He didn't get a chance to answer because someone bumped into them, spilling champagne down his back. The moment shattered. "I'm going to get some air," Chloe said, and walked away. Later that night, Ethan stood on the balcony watching the waves crash below. Chloe joined him, arms wrapped around herself. "Sorry for pushing earlier," she apologized. "You didn't," he said. She turned to him. "You're the kind of man who controls the temperature of every room. But people like me, people who start fires, we exist too, and you're not as cold as you pretend to be." He looked at her, eyes dark, and nodded. She stepped closer. "What are you so afraid of?" He confessed that he had built a world where vulnerability had no place and feelings were liabilities. She noted that despite that, here he was, sharing a suite with a woman who made him feel everything. The silence pulsed between them. Her hand brushed his. He turned. She moved toward him, and in one swift, charged moment, he kissed her. It wasn't soft. It wasn't tentative. It was fire meeting ice, and both of them melting. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Chloe smiled and whispered that it was one way to end the night. He was about to respond when a loud knock echoed from the suite door. They froze. She laughed, calling him Mr. Carter and joking that he'd been saved by the bell. The knock on the door echoed through the suite again. Chloe untangled herself from Ethan's arms, cheeks flushed, lips tingling, heart racing. She was still catching her breath when he walked to the main door and opened it to reveal Michael, looking slightly drunk, with a loosened tie and a glass of whiskey in hand. "There you are!" Michael boomed with a grin, saying he'd been looking for them and insisting they join the late-night poker game at the poolside bar. Ethan started to protest. "Now's not really a—" But Michael waved him off, declaring that Ethan was the best man and had to be there for tradition's sake. Michael's eyes slid past Ethan and saw Chloe, greeting her with a mischievous comment about the roommate arrangement going great. Chloe laughed nervously and replied that Michael had no idea, after a playful threat that he'd send the whole groomsman squad after them. In 10 minutes, Michael staggered down the hall. Ethan closed the door and leaned back against it, muttering, "Well, that happened." Chloe smiled softly, the heat between them still thick in the air, noting that they had 10 minutes, apparently. Ethan crossed the room, the earlier tension still dancing in his posture, and told her that what happened on the balcony was real. She nodded in a whisper, acknowledging it wasn't just some wedding weekend fling. He reminded her that they lived in different cities, in different worlds. She ran a small non-profit in Charleston, while he ran a multi-million-dollar firm in New York City. Chloe stepped closer and pointed out that they had somehow shared a bed for 2 nights without killing each other. He joked it was because she was too busy mocking his wardrobe, and she countered that he was too busy judging her music playlist. He laughed, then grew serious. He hadn't let anyone in for years, but she had crashed into his life like a tidal wave, laughing too loud, speaking her mind, flirting like it was breathing. And yet, he'd never felt more seen. Chloe's eyes welled up as she confessed she put on a brave face, but had been hurt by men who wanted her body, but not her brain, who told her she was too much, too loud, too curvy, too everything. Ethan's jaw tightened as he said they were idiots. She smiled, pointing out that here they were, 2 people scared of falling. He took her hand. Then let's fall together, 1 step at a time. She squeezed his fingers and joked that he really was a romantic under all that Armani. Before he could answer, her phone rang on the nightstand. She picked it up and groaned. It was the bride, asking for help with her vows. Ethan checked his watch and noted he had poker duty in 5. She leaned in and kissed his cheek, asking him to be continued. He nodded, definitely. And just when he started to trust, the past returned without warning. Later that night, the resort was quiet at 2 a.m. The poker game had ended with Michael singing off-key and someone jumping into the pool fully clothed. Ethan returned to the suite exhausted, only to find Chloe already asleep on the sofa, a book splayed across her chest. He paused in the doorway and just watched her. The way her curls fanned out around her face, the slow rise and fall of her chest, the slight furrow between her brows even in sleep. She was chaos wrapped in sunshine, and he wanted her more than anything. Quietly, he lifted the book, draped a blanket over her, and whispered, "Good night, puzzle." The next morning, the resort was buzzing with excitement. White roses lined the walkway. A harpist played soft music, and guests sipped champagne under a flower-draped archway overlooking the ocean. Ethan stood near the altar with Michael, trying not to fidget with his cufflinks. He scanned the crowd until he saw Chloe walking down the aisle, not as a bridesmaid this time, but helping the flower girls and carrying the bride's train. She was stunning in lavender silk that hugged her hips. Her lips gleamed with a gloss that lit up her smile. Their eyes met briefly, and her wink made his pulse race. Michael leaned over and whispered that Ethan was totally into her. Ethan didn't bother to deny it. After the ceremony, the reception began under strings of fairy lights. Speeches were made, glasses were toasted, and the music started. Chloe found Ethan by the open bar and told him he cleaned up nice. "I always look like this," he replied. "Exactly my point," she retorted. He leaned in and asked her to dance, for real this time. She arched an eyebrow, asking if he meant in front of everyone. He said he didn't care who saw. She took his hand and led him to the floor. This time there was no hesitation. His hand slid around her waist, her arms wrapped around his neck, and they moved in perfect sync as a slow, dreamy song filled the air. People whispered and stared, but they didn't care. As the final notes faded, Ethan cupped her cheek and kissed her, right there on the dance floor, under the lights, in front of everyone. Chloe's eyes fluttered open with a soft, "Wow, that's what you do to me," he whispered. Then Michael took the microphone and announced that the bridal suite had a plumbing issue, which meant room changes. Everyone groaned, but Michael reassured them. He said Chloe had been moved to a different room and Ethan was stuck with the party posse. Chloe turned to Ethan with a teasing smile and noted that their forced roommate situation was over. He nodded. "Unless we make it less forced." She tilted her head in curiosity. He took her hand and asked her to come back to New York with him for a weekend, a week, a month, whatever she wanted. "Let's see where this goes." Her eyes widened as she asked if he was serious. "As serious as a hostile takeover," he replied. She laughed and said she couldn't just drop everything. He offered to come to her instead. Her rules, her city, even promising to eat. And donuts and dance in the streets if she asked. She smiled and told him he'd hate that. "I'd love it if you were there," he said. She leaned in and agreed on one condition: no more emotional armor. He nodded. Deal, but only if you stop calling me Wall Street. Absolutely not, she refused. They kissed again, laughter dancing between them. What he said before leaving will change the course of the whole story. A week later, Chloe stood in the airport terminal in New York City with oversized sunglasses on her head and passport in hand. Ethan was waiting just past security with 2 coffees and a smile that made her knees weak. "Welcome to the capital," he greeted, handing her a cup. She took a sip and joked that he probably hired a barista to make it just right. "Maybe," he admitted. They walked into the city together, side by side. Curvy chaos and multi-million-dollar precision. Fire and ice. A room assignment that changed everything, and the start of something neither of them saw coming. But as they drove through the city streets, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to shift. His phone had been buzzing all morning with calls from his assistant, all of which he had ignored. There was work waiting for him, decisions to be made, a world he had to return to. And Chloe. Chloe had her own life in Charleston, her non-profit, her responsibilities, her dreams she'd been chasing long before she met him. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, noticing his silence. "About how to make this work," he admitted. "In real life, I mean. Outside of the wedding bubble." Chloe nodded, understanding. "I've been thinking about that too." For the next few days, they lived in a kind of urban fantasy. Ethan showed her his New York, fancy restaurants, art galleries, the view from his penthouse that spanned the entire valley. Chloe introduced him to her world too, taking him to local markets, small cafes where they knew her by name, places where she could just be herself, without cameras or expectations. But reality had a way of seeping in. On the 3rd day, while Chloe was in the shower, Ethan's phone rang. It was Robert Miller, his business partner, and one of his closest friends. "Ethan, I need to talk to you," Robert said without preamble. "It's about the Velasco merger." "What about it?" "It fell through. Completely. Velasco pulled their offer this morning." Ethan felt like he'd been punched in the gut. The Velasco merger was the deal of the year, something he'd been working on for months. "Why?" "They said they doubted your commitment, that you've been distracted lately." Ethan looked toward the bathroom where he could hear Chloe singing in the shower, and he felt his world split in two. "Robert, There's more. The board is worried. They've been asking questions about your absence, about whether your head is really in the game." When Chloe came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel with her hair dripping, she found Ethan, standing by the window, his posture tense and rigid again. "Everything okay?" she asked. He turned, and she could see something had shifted. The walls he had been slowly tearing down were back up, higher than before. "I have to get back to work," he said. "There's a crisis that needs my attention." "Okay," she said, though something in his tone made her pause. "How long do you need?" "I don't know." He spent the rest of the day on phone calls, in his office, managing the crisis. Chloe explored the city alone, but the day felt different. When she returned that evening, he was still working. "Dinner?" she asked. "Order something in," he said without looking up from his laptop. "I'll be busy for a while." Chloe stood there for a moment, watching the man she had come to know disappear before her eyes, replaced by the cold, distant CEO she had first met. That night, they lay on opposite sides of the bed again, but this time it felt different. It felt like a regression. "Ethan," she whispered in the dark. "Yeah? Was this a mistake?" There was a long pause. "I don't know," he finally said, and the words felt like a knife in her chest. The next morning, Chloe packed in silence. Ethan was on another conference call when she finished. "I'm leaving," she announced. He covered the phone. "Chloe, wait." "No," she said, holding up a hand. "This is exactly what I was afraid would happen. That when real life showed up, I'd be the first thing you'd discard." Ethan ended the call and walked over to her. "You're not being fair." "Am I not?" Her eyes filled with tears. 3 days ago, you told me you wanted to make this work. Now you're acting like I'm a burden. My company is in crisis, Chloe. I can't just ignore that. I'm not asking you to ignore it. I'm asking you to include me, to make me feel like I'm part of your life, not a distraction from it." Ethan ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. It's complicated. You know what else is complicated? She said, her voice cracking, falling for someone who's so afraid of feeling anything real that he runs the moment things get hard. I'm not running, aren't you? She picked up her suitcase. Then stop me. Fight for this. Fight for us. Ethan just stood there, watching the woman who had changed his world walk away, and said nothing, because deep down he knew she was right. He was scared. Scared that loving someone like Chloe meant losing control. Scared that choosing her meant failing at everything else. But as the door closed behind her, he realized he had already failed at the one thing that truly mattered. Can you love someone who broke your soul? The answer is just one step away. 3 weeks passed in a blur of work and loneliness. Ethan threw himself into saving his company, working 18-hour days, sleeping in the office more nights than he could count. He managed to stabilize the situation, find new investors, even close a deal even better than the one he'd lost. But every night, when he finally allowed himself to stop, he found himself staring at his phone, typing out texts to Chloe that he never sent. I'm sorry. I miss you. I made a mistake. Robert found him one night in his office, surrounded by paperwork and empty takeout containers. You look terrible, he observed. Thanks, very helpful. When was the last time you went home? Ethan shrugged. What day is it? Robert sat down across from him. You know what? Forget work for a minute. Tell me about her. About who? The woman who's got you like this. The one from the wedding weekend. Ethan looked up, surprised. How? Michael told me. Said he'd never seen you like that with anyone. Said she made you laugh. Yeah, well, that's over. Why? Because we can't be in two places at once, Robert. I can't run a multi-billion-dollar company and have a serious relationship. You know that. Robert leaned back in his chair. You know what your problem is, Ethan. You think you have to choose. Work or love, success or happiness, like they're mutually exclusive, aren't they? My wife and I have been married for 15 years. I have 3 kids, and I also run a successful company. It's not easy, but it's possible, if you want to make it work. Ethan was silent. Do you love her? Robert asked. The question hit him like a lightning bolt. Did he love her? He thought about her laugh in the hotel room, the way her body felt against his when they danced, the way she looked at him like she could see right into his soul. Yeah, he whispered. I think I do. Then stop being an idiot and go get her. That night, Ethan called Michael. I need Chloe's number, he said without preamble. What for? To apologize, to beg her to forgive me, to tell her I love her. Bro, okay, but there's something you need to know first. Ethan's heart stopped. What? Her non-profit is in trouble. Serious trouble. They're going to have to close down if they don't get funding soon. How much do they need? Michael told him the figure. It was a significant amount, but not impossible. For someone like Ethan, it was manageable. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because she made me promise not to. Said she didn't want you to think she was with you for your money. Ethan felt his heart break a little more. Even when her world was falling apart, Chloe had been protecting his feelings. Give me her address, he said. I'm going to Charleston. The drive to Charleston gave him time to think, to plan what he would say. But when he arrived at the small office where Chloe worked, all his prepared words vanished. He found her at her desk, surrounded by boxes, clearly packing up. She looked exhausted, defeated, but still beautiful. When she saw him standing in the doorway, her eyes widened. Ethan, what are you doing here? I came to apologize, he said, stepping slowly closer. And to offer you something. She stood up, crossing her arms defensively. If it's money, I don't want it. What if it's my heart? Chloe blinked, clearly not expecting that. What? Ethan moved closer. You were right about everything you said. I'm a coward. I'm so afraid of losing control that I was willing to lose you. But these last 3 weeks without you have been hell. I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can't think about anything but how stupid I was. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. Ethan, let me finish, he said, taking her hands. I can't promise you it will be easy. My job is demanding. It's complicated. but I can promise you that I will never again make you feel like you're a burden. I can promise you that I will fight for us every single day. And I can promise you that I love you, Chloe. I love you in a way I didn't know was possible." Tears were streaming down Chloe's cheeks now. "What about my non-profit, my life here?" "This is where my offer comes in," he said with a small smile. "I want to invest in your organization, not as your boyfriend, but as a business partner who believes in what you do. I want to help you expand, to reach more people, and I want to do that from here with you." "Are you saying you'd move to Charleston?" "I'm saying I'd move my main office to wherever you are, because I've learned something in these 3 weeks. Success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with." Chloe was silent for a long moment, processing his words. "How do I know you won't run again when things get hard?" Ethan smiled and pulled something out of his pocket. It was a key. "Because I already bought a house here, in Charleston, with your name on the deed, too." Chloe's eyes widened. "You did what?" "I bought a house. For us. If you'll have me. If you'll forgive me. If you're willing to try this again." Chloe stared at him for a long moment, then smiled through her tears. "You are completely insane, you know that?" "Insane about you," he admitted. She launched herself into his arms, and he lifted her, spinning her in circles as they both laughed and cried at the same time. "I love you too," she whispered against his neck. "I love you so much it hurts." When they finally broke apart, Ethan cupped her face. "So, is that a yes?" "It's a yes to everything," she said. "To the house, to the partnership, to us. But on one condition. Anything. This time, when things get hard, you tell me. You don't shut down. We talk. Together." "Together," he agreed, and he kissed her with all the passion and promise he'd been holding in his heart. "The secret will finally be revealed, and nothing will ever be the same." A year later, Chloe stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of their new office in Charleston, a steaming mug of coffee in her hand and Ethan's dress shirt worn over her curves. The city bustled below, but in this moment the world felt calm. Her organization had grown exponentially in the last year. With Ethan's investment and expertise, they had been able to expand their programs, hire more staff, and reach thousands of young women across the country. But more than that, she had found something she never knew she was looking for: a true partner. The office she now occupied was a world away from the small room where she had started. The walls were decorated with certificates of recognition, photos from their program graduations, and thank you letters from women whose lives had been changed. There was a comfortable sofa where she often sat with the younger participants, creating a safe space where they could talk without judgment. On her desk, next to her computer, was a photo of her and Ethan on the day they signed the official partnership papers between her non-profit and his company. They were both smiling, but there was something else in their eyes, the deep satisfaction of knowing they were building something meaningful together. Ethan came up behind her, pressing a kiss to the back of her neck, his arms sliding around her waist. "You're up early," he murmured, inhaling the familiar scent of her. "Vanilla shampoo." "Wanted to watch the sunrise," she replied, leaning back against his chest. "And I have something to tell you." He turned her gently to face him, noticing a special sparkle in her green eyes. "You're not pregnant, are you?" She snorted, swatting his arm playfully. "No, but it's good to know where your mind goes, Mr. Carter." He grinned, kissing her forehead. "Okay, spill. I know you well enough to know when you have big news." She held up an elegant letter between her fingers, the cream paper and gold logo gleaming in the morning light. "We received an invitation to give a TED Talk in Los Angeles on building sustainable relationships between nonprofits and private enterprise." Ethan's eyes lit up with genuine pride. "Chloe, that's incredible. Do you know what this means? TED Los Angeles is one of the most prestigious platforms in the world. The thing is," she continued, her voice trembling slightly with emotion, "they want us to present together, as partners, in both business and life. They said our story of personal and professional transformation is exactly the kind of narrative they want to highlight." Ethan lifted her off the ground, spinning her in circles as they both laughed. "And what did you say?" "That I'd have to ask my co-CEO if he could fit it into his schedule," she joked, her eyes shining with happiness. Ethan set her down gently, framing her face with his hands. "My schedule will always have room for you, for us, for everything we're building together." They kissed as the city bloomed with morning light. 2 cups of coffee cooling on the desk behind them, symbols of chaos and order finally finding balance. When they parted, Chloe studied Ethan's face. In the past year, she'd seen subtle but profound changes in him. The lines of tension around his eyes had softened. He smiled more easily. He had learned to laugh at himself, but most importantly, he had learned to be present, fully present, in the moments that mattered. "Ethan," she said softly, "do you ever regret changing your life so drastically for me?" He looked at her, surprised. "What are you talking about? You left New York. You changed your entire business operation. You transformed your company from a traditional corporation to one that focuses on social responsibility. All of that to be with me." Ethan took her hands, lacing his fingers through hers. "Chloe, my love, I didn't change my life for you. I changed my life because you taught me who I really wanted to be. All that rigid structure, that obsession with control, that wasn't strength, it was fear. Fear of feeling, fear of failing, fear of being vulnerable." He moved closer, his blue eyes intense and sincere. "When I met you, when I saw how you lived your life with such passion and authenticity, I realized that I wasn't living. I was existing, I was functioning, but I wasn't truly alive." Chloe felt her eyes well up. "But you were so successful. Successful according to whom? I had money, yes. I had power, yes. But I came home every night to an empty apartment, ate lonely dinners in front of my laptop, and went to bed thinking about the next deals I had to close. That's not success, Chloe. That's a gilded cage." He cupped her cheek with his free hand. "Now I come home and you're there, singing off-key in the shower. My house smells like the candles you light everywhere. We have dinners where we talk about our days, our dreams, the little things that make us happy. I go to bed every night grateful to be alive. That, my love, is real success." Chloe threw her arms around him, hugging him with all her might. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes," she whispered against his neck. "Me too," he admitted. "But I've learned that fear isn't the opposite of love. It's a part of it. When you truly love someone, when you really care, there's fear because there's so much to lose. But that fear also tells you how precious what you have is." They held each other in silence for several minutes, just existing in the moment. Outside, Charleston was slowly waking up. Street vendors began to call out their wares, children ran to school, daily life unfolded as it always did. But inside that office, in that embrace, time had stood still. But there was something else Ethan had been holding on to, something he had been planning for weeks. When they broke apart, he took her by the hands, his heart beating so loudly he was sure she could hear it. "Chloe, there's something I want to ask you." "What?" Her voice was casual, but he noticed the little furrow of curiosity between her brows that appeared when she was intrigued. He took a deep breath, remembering the speech he had practiced in front of the mirror dozens of times, but knowing that in this moment, with her looking at him with those love-filled green eyes, the words would have to come from the heart. He got down on one knee before her, pulling a small blue velvet box from his pocket. Chloe gasped, her hands flying to her mouth, her eyes widening with shock and joy. "Chloe Davis," he said, his voice trembling slightly, not from nerves but from pure emotion. "A year ago, I thought I knew exactly what my life would look like. Orderly, predictable, under control. Every day the same as the last, every year a repeat of the one before." Tears began to stream down Chloe's cheeks, but her eyes never left his. "Then you showed up, with your 3 suitcases and your too loud laugh and your too big heart, and you wrecked all my plans in the best possible way. You taught me that life isn't about controlling every variable, but about finding the person you want to navigate the unpredictable with." His voice grew stronger, more confident. You taught me that loving someone doesn't mean losing control. It means finding the person you want to share control with. It means building something together that neither of you could create alone. He opened the box, revealing a ring he had designed specifically for her. It wasn't the traditional solitaire diamond his old self would have chosen. Instead, it was a ring with a central emerald surrounded by tiny diamonds, the colors reminiscent of her green eyes and the little lights that always seemed to sparkle in them when she laughed. You taught me that being vulnerable isn't a weakness. It's the only way to be truly strong. It's the only way to really connect with another person. It's the only way to love and be loved completely. Chloe was sobbing now, but her smile was radiant. Chloe Davis, my partner in everything, my best friend, the woman who taught me what it means to be truly alive. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my co-conspirator, my partner in this beautiful madness we call life? Chloe launched herself into his arms with such force she nearly knocked him over, crying, "Yes! Yes, 1,000 times yes," as he scrambled to keep his balance and protect the ring at the same time. When he finally set her down, he slid the ring onto her finger with hands that trembled slightly. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made specifically for that hand, for that woman, for that moment. "I love you, future Mrs. Carter," he whispered, kissing her hand where the ring now sparkled. "I love you, future Mr. Davis Carter," she joked, admiring how the emerald caught the morning light. Ethan blinked. "Davis Carter, you have a problem with that?" she asked, raising an eyebrow in a gesture he had come to know and love. He laughed, a deep, genuine laugh that filled the office. "None at all. In fact, I like the sound of it. Ethan Davis Carter has a nice ring to it. Besides," Chloe added with a mischievous smile, "think of how confused our children will be when they try to write their full names in school." "Our children?" Ethan asked, his heart leaping again. "Well, eventually, when we're ready, when we've traveled a bit, expanded the organization, given that TED talk, when we've lived a little more of this beautiful madness that is loving each other," he finished. "Exactly." They kissed again, deeper this time, a kiss that tasted of future promises and shared dreams. The next few months passed in a whirlwind of wedding preparations and planning for the TED Talk. Chloe insisted on a small, intimate ceremony, something that reflected who they really were as a couple. Ethan, who had attended far too many lavish, soulless weddings, completely agreed. They chose Savannah, Georgia, because it was where they'd had their first real date after the resort weekend. Ethan had flown down just to take her to dinner, a gesture that at the time had seemed completely insane to him, but which he now understood was the moment he knew he would do anything to be with her. The beach they chose was small and private, accessible only by a winding path down the cliffs. They had rented a nearby colonial house for their immediate family and friends. Michael would be the best man, obviously, and Emily the maid of honor. Chloe's parents, who had initially been skeptical of this New York businessman who had stolen their daughter, now adored him almost as much as she did. On the morning of the wedding, Chloe woke up in the colonial house, surrounded by her bridesmaids who were helping her get ready. Her dress was simple but elegant, white lace that hugged every curve without apology, three-quarter-length sleeves that ended in delicate cuffs, and a skirt that moved like water when she walked. Her hair was styled in natural waves, crowned with a simple headband of wildflowers she had picked from the garden that morning. Her earrings were pearls that had belonged to her grandmother, and her necklace was a gift from Ethan, a delicate chain with a small heart-shaped locket engraved with "My puzzle" on one side and "My solution" on the other. "You're radiant," Emily told her, adjusting the simple veil that fell to Chloe's shoulders. "I feel like I'm dreaming," Chloe admitted, looking at herself in the mirror. "Is it normal to feel like this? Like it's too good to be true?" "It's normal when you've found your person," replied Maria, her younger sister, "when you've found the man who loves you exactly as you are." Meanwhile, in another part of the house, Ethan was getting ready with Michael and the other groomsmen. He wore a navy blue suit that he'd chosen because Chloe had once told him that color made his eyes look like the ocean. His tie was the same color as the wildflowers in Chloe's hair, though he didn't know it yet. "Nervous?" Michael asked, helping him with his cufflinks. "Surprisingly, no," Ethan replied, looking at himself in the mirror. "I feel at peace, like I'm finally doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing." "It's an incredible feeling, isn't it?" Michael said, "knowing you've found your life partner. Emily and I have been married for 3 years, and I still wake up some days unable to believe my luck." Ethan smiled, remembering all the times Michael had tried to convince him to relax, to find someone special, to stop working so much and live a little. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "For what? For dragging me to that wedding, for making me meet Chloe, for not giving up on me when I was a closed-off jerk." Michael laughed. "Any time, brother, though technically I should be thanking the hotel clerk who messed up the reservation." The ceremony took place at sunset, when the sun painted the sky in oranges and pinks. A simple arch of white roses and wildflowers framed the makeshift altar on the sand. A harpist played soft music as guests took their seats on white chairs arranged in a semicircle. When Chloe appeared at the end of the path, on her father's arm, Ethan felt the world stop. He had seen beautiful women before, been to elegant weddings, witnessed elaborate ceremonies, but he had never seen anything as perfectly beautiful as Chloe walking toward him on that beach, her dress moving in the ocean breeze, her green eyes shining with happy tears. When they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye among the guests. "Ethan," Chloe said, her voice clear and strong despite the tears, "you taught me that I deserve to be loved exactly as I am. Not a thinner version of myself, not a quieter version, not a version that apologizes for taking up space. You taught me that my curves are beautiful, that my laugh is music, and that my big heart is my greatest strength, not a weakness." Her voice softened, more intimate. "You taught me that. True love isn't about changing the other person. It's about loving them so completely that they feel safe being who they truly are. I promise to love you on the easy days and the hard ones, in success and in failure, in chaos and in calm. I promise to be your partner, your confidant, your biggest fan and your most honest critic." She smiled through her tears. "I promise to never be afraid to take up space again. I promise to love you without reservation, and I promise there will always, always be fresh coffee waiting for you in the mornings." The crowd laughed softly at the last promise, knowing how important the morning coffee ritual was to this couple. "Chloe," Ethan responded, his voice thick with emotion, "you taught me what it means to be truly alive. Before I met you, I was functioning, not living. I was following a script someone else had written for me, working toward goals I didn't really care about, building a life that looked successful from the outside but felt empty on the inside." He took a deep breath, his voice growing stronger. "You taught me that love isn't something you control, but something you surrender to completely. You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the gateway to real connection. You taught me that being with the right person doesn't limit your life, it expands it in ways you never knew were possible." His eyes filled with tears as he continued. "I promise to choose you every single day, not because it's easy, but because you are my favorite choice. I promise to fight for us when things get hard, because I know what we have is worth fighting for. I promise to never again be afraid of feeling everything you make me feel. And I promise I will never, ever again sleep on the couch just because I'm too proud to admit I want to be close to you." The crowd laughed again, remembering the stories they'd heard about this couple's early days. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, they kissed under the arch of flowers as the sun set over the Atlantic, painting everything in gold. The photograph of that moment would become their favorite. Both of them laughing through happy tears, completely lost in their own world of joy. During the reception dance, held on the terrace of the colonial house under fairy lights, as they swayed slowly to a song they had chosen together, Chloe whispered, "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Not in my wildest dreams, Ethan admitted. But now I can't imagine being anywhere else. I wouldn't change a single moment of our journey, not even the initial panic of having to share a room with you. She laughed, the sound mingling with the music and the distant waves. Not even when you thought I snored that first night. Especially that part, he said, spinning her gently, because it was in that moment that I realized there was something different about you. Something that made me want to stay awake just to listen to you breathe. They kissed again, lost in their own perfect world, as their families and friends watched with knowing smiles. 2 years to the day after their wedding, Chloe stood on the balcony of their new home in Charleston, a house they had designed together from the ground up. She had one hand on her slightly rounded belly, where their first child was growing. Ethan came up behind her, placing his hands over hers, feeling the tiny life moving within. "How's our baby today?" he asked, kissing the side of her neck. "Active," Chloe laughed. "I think he's going to be as chaotic as his mom." "God help us all," Ethan joked, though his voice was filled with love and anticipation. They had built a beautiful life together. Chloe's organization now operated in 7 states and had helped over 5,000 women find work, education, and most importantly, self-esteem. Ethan had completely reorganized his company to focus on socially responsible investments, using his wealth to create positive change rather than just accumulating more money. They had given that TED Talk that had been viewed by over 2 million people on YouTube. Their story of personal and professional transformation had inspired hundreds of couples to write to them, telling them how they had found the courage to combine their own personal and professional passions. But more than all that, they had learned to love each other without reservation, to support each other without condition, to be vulnerable without fear. "You know what I realized today?" Chloe said, leaning back against Ethan's chest as they felt the baby move between them. "What?" "That my whole life I was waiting for someone to really see me. All those past relationships, all those men who made me feel like I was too much. I was looking for validation in all the wrong places. And now," she turned in his arms to look at him directly, "now I know that true love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who loves you completely as you are, and who grows with you towards who you want to be. It's about finding someone who sees your potential before you even see it yourself." Ethan kissed her softly, savoring the words she had just spoken. "I couldn't have said it better myself." 5 years later, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm pancakes filled the kitchen of the colonial house in the heart of Charleston. Chloe Davis Carter moved gracefully between the stove and the breakfast table, her mustard-yellow dress hugging the curves that had changed after 2 pregnancies, but remained as beautiful as ever. Her brown curls now had a few golden streaks that shone in the morning light, filtering through the large, bright windows. "Mommy! Sophia ate my cereal again!" shouted Matthew, their 4-year-old son, running into the kitchen in his superhero pajamas, his hair just as unruly as his father's. "Nah-uh," protested 2-year-old Sophia from her high chair, her chubby cheeks smeared with milk and a mischievous grin that melted. "Hot. I ate my cereal," Chloe laughed, kissing Matthew's forehead and wiping Sophia's face. "There's enough cereal for everyone, my love. Where's Daddy?" "On the phone in his office," Matthew replied, climbing into his chair. "He's saying important words I don't understand." "Business words," Chloe translated with a smile. Ethan appeared in the kitchen doorway moments later, already dressed in navy slacks and a crisp white shirt, but with his tie still unknotted and hanging around his neck. At 37, there were a few new lines around his eyes, but they only made him look more distinguished. His hair had some grey at the temples that Chloe adored because it gave him an air of wisdom. "Good morning, beautiful family," he said, kissing Chloe on the lips first, then the crown of each child's head. "How was the call with Tokyo?" Chloe asked, handing him a cup of coffee prepared exactly how he liked it. "Successful. The sustainability project is a go. We're going to implement our social responsibility model in their Asian offices." Chloe smiled with pride. In the 5 years since their wedding, they had transformed not only their personal lives, but also the way Ethan did business. His company was now internationally recognized for its ethical practices and social impact programs. "That means you'll be traveling again," she observed without reproach, only pragmatism, "just for a week. And this time, if you want, the whole family can come. The kids would love Japan." Matthew shouted with excitement, while Sophia clapped, not fully understanding but feeding off her brother's energy. "Airplanes," Sophia said, her new favorite word. "Yes, baby, big airplanes," Ethan confirmed, lifting her from her chair for a hug. Chloe watched them, her heart swelling with love. There were moments like this when she still couldn't believe this was her life, that the man who was once so afraid to feel anything real was now the most devoted father, the most attentive husband, the most present partner any woman could dream of. Her phone rang, interrupting the perfect family morning moment. "Chloe Davis Carter," she answered professionally. "Chloe!" It was Emily's excited voice, now Emily Johnson, and a mother of twins. "Did you see the news?" "What news?" "Your organization was nominated for the International Social Innovation Award. You're all over the morning news." Chloe almost dropped the phone. Ethan looked at her with concern, immediately approaching. "What's wrong?" Chloe covered the phone. "We were nominated for the International Social Innovation Award." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Chloe, do you know what that means?" "What?" Eleanor asked from the phone. "What's happening?" "Emily, I'll call you back in 5 minutes, Chloe said, hanging up to process the news with her family. Ethan lifted her and spun her around the kitchen, just as he had on the day they got engaged. "My brilliant, beautiful wife is conquering the world." "Mummy's flying!" Matthew shouted, clapping. Sophia clapped too, though she was still more interested in finishing her breakfast. When Ethan set her down, Chloe had tears in her eyes. "I can't believe it. 5 years ago my organization was about to close. And now you're changing lives across the United States and beyond," Ethan finished, cupping her face. "And I have the privilege of being married to the most extraordinary woman in the world." They kissed softly, a kiss full of history, of overcome struggles, of dreams come true. "Gross," Matthew protested. "No kissing at breakfast." Chloe laughed. "My son, when you're older and you find someone you love like Daddy loves me, you'll understand there's no bad time to kiss the person you love." Ethan smiled. "While your mother is right, maybe we should give their young eyes a break." An hour later, after dropping Matthew at kindergarten and leaving Sophia with the nanny, Chloe and Ethan arrived together at the offices of the Strong Hearts Foundation. What had started as a small non-profit now occupied a full 3-story building in Charleston's historic district. The walls were covered with photos of all the young women who had passed through their programs, girls who had regained their self-esteem, single mothers who had started their own businesses, students who had received scholarships, women who had escaped abusive relationships and rebuilt their lives. "Mrs. Davis Carter," greeted Patricia, her executive assistant. "5 journalists have already arrived asking for interviews about the nomination, and you have 12 congratulatory calls waiting." Chloe felt overwhelmed for a moment. "Breathe," Ethan whispered in her ear. "You deserve all of it." Chloe's office was on the 3rd floor, with windows overlooking the city's historic cathedral spire. The walls were decorated with local art and photos of her family, including one from their wedding that always made her smile. On her desk was a small plaque Ethan had given her on their first anniversary. "She believed she could, so she did." "Chloe," said Luce, her program director, entering the office with a look of pure joy. "Do you know what this nomination means?" "Enlighten us," Ethan said, sitting in one of the chairs in front of Chloe's desk. "It means international visibility. It means funding. It means we could expand to Central and South America. Chloe, you could be on your way to becoming one of the most important voices for female empowerment in all of North America." Chloe sat in her chair, trying to process the magnitude of what was happening. 5 years ago," she said slowly, I was packing up these offices because we didn't have the money to keep operating. And now you're telling me we could be helping women across the continent. You know what the most beautiful part of all this is? Ethan said. That you're not doing it alone. We're doing it together. It was true. In the last 5 years, Ethan had not only been her husband and the father of her children, but also her most valuable business partner. He had used his connections and expertise to open doors that Chloe never could have opened alone. But more importantly, he had learned to do it all without taking control, without belittling her ideas, without making her feel like she was less capable. They had learned to dance together in business just as they did in life, she with her passion and creativity, he with his strategy and connections, both respecting each other's strengths. "Luce, can you give us 5 minutes?" Chloe asked. When they were alone, Chloe walked over to Ethan, who immediately opened his arms to receive her. "Do you remember that night on the resort balcony?" she asked, settling into his lap. "When you told me you had built a world where vulnerability had no place. How could I forget? It was the night that changed my life. I was so scared that night, not just of falling for you, but of falling in love in general. I had been hurt so many times by men who saw me as an object, not a whole person." Ethan stroked her hair. "And now look where we are. You, nominated for international awards for changing the world. Me, happier than I ever thought possible. Our children growing up in a house full of love and respect. Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life, like it's too good to be true." "You know why it feels that way?" Ethan asked, looking into her eyes. "Because for so long, we both thought we had to choose. Me between success and love, you between being wanted and being respected. But we learned that the best things in life come when you stop choosing and start building." Chloe leaned in and kissed him softly. "I love you, Ethan Carter. I love you for seeing me completely from day one. I love you for growing with me instead of trying to change me. I love you for being the best father our children could have. And I love you for teaching me that vulnerability is power, for showing me that loving completely doesn't make you weak, it makes you invincible." That afternoon, after a day full of interviews and congratulatory calls, the Davis Carter family gathered in their backyard garden. Ethan had come home early from work to help with the kids, something he had learned to do without Chloe having to ask. Matthew played with his toy cars in the dirt, while Sophia tried to catch butterflies with her tiny hands. Chloe and Ethan sat on their favorite swing, the same one where they had had so many important conversations over the years. "You know what I was thinking today?" Chloe said, leaning against Ethan's shoulder. "What?" "About all the women who are going to know our story. About the young girls who are going to hear about a curvy woman from Charleston who was hurt but didn't give up, who built something beautiful from the ashes of her pain. And about all the men who are going to hear about a businessman who thought he had to choose between success and love until an extraordinary woman taught him he could have both." Chloe smiled. "Do you think our story could inspire other people?" "Chloe, my love, our story is already inspiring other people. Every woman who goes through your program, every couple who sees how we work together, every person who knows us, they all see that it's possible." "What's possible?" "That it's possible to heal, that it's possible to love after pain, that it's possible to build something beautiful, even when you start from scratch." Just then, Sophia ran to them with a crumpled flower in her little hand. "For Mommy," she said, climbing onto Chloe's lap. "Thank you, my love. It's beautiful." Matthew came over too, climbing onto Ethan's lap. "Daddy, why is Mommy on TV?" Ethan looked at Chloe, smiling. "Because your mommy does very important things that help a lot of people. Like a superhero?" "Exactly like a superhero," Chloe confirmed. "But instead of a cape, I wear pretty dresses. And instead of flying, she uses her heart and her brain. To save the day," Ethan added. As the sun set over Charleston, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, just as it had that first night on the resort balcony, Chloe reflected on the path that had led them here. It had been a path full of obstacles. Her own insecurities, Ethan's fears, the demands of building a life together while chasing ambitious dreams. They had had arguments, moments of doubt, nights where they wondered if they could really make it work. But it had also been a path full of magic, laughter in the early mornings, dances in the kitchen, conversations that lasted until dawn, small moments of tenderness that added up to a life full of love. "Ethan," Chloe said softly. "Yeah? Do you ever regret falling for the crazy lady who snored in the bed next to you?" Ethan laughed, kissing the top of her head. "Not for a second, although I have to confess something." "What? You never snored. I made that up to have an excuse to stay awake and listen to you breathe." Chloe lifted her head to look at him, surprised. "Really? Really? From that very first night I was fascinated by you, the way you took up space without apologizing, the way you laughed like you didn't care who heard you, the way you looked at me like you could see right into my soul." "You beautiful liar," Chloe said, but her eyes were shining with happiness. "A liar in love," Ethan corrected. As their children played at their feet and the stars began to appear in the Charleston sky, Chloe and Ethan swayed gently on their swing, content in the shared silence. They had learned that true love wasn't a fairy tale where everything was perfect from the first moment. It was a daily work of choosing each other, of communicating even when it was difficult, of supporting each other through triumphs and hardships. But more than that, they had learned that when two people fully commit to growing together, they can build something more beautiful than either of them could have ever imagined. Separately, "Ethan," Chloe said after a long silence. "Yeah? Thank you. For what? For being brave that first night, for staying when everything in you wanted to run, for teaching me that love isn't something you control, but something you surrender to completely." Chloe smiled, turning in his arms to face him. "And thank you for seeing my worth before I even saw it myself, for loving me on my hard days and celebrating with me on the good ones, for being the man I always knew you could be, even when you didn't know it yourself." They kissed under the Charleston stars, surrounded by the sounds of their children laughing, the scent of the flowers in their garden, and the feeling of being exactly where they belonged. The next morning, Chloe woke up early to get ready for her most important day yet. The International Awards ceremony would be broadcast live from New York City, and she would be traveling to attend as one of the 3 finalists. As she got ready in front of the mirror, Ethan came up behind her, helping her with the zipper of her navy blue dress she had chosen, especially for the occasion. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," Chloe admitted. "What if we don't win? What if I've been dreaming too big?" Ethan turned her to face him. "Chloe Davis Carter, listen to me very carefully. You've already won. The day you decided not to give up on your organization, you already won. The day you decided to love yourself enough to demand the love you deserved, you already won. The day you decided to use your pain to help other women, you already won. But no buts. That award would be beautiful, and you deserve it more than anyone. But even if you don't win it today, you've already won in the ways that truly matter." Chloe felt her eyes well up with tears. "How do you always know exactly what to say?" "Because I've had 5 years of practice loving the most extraordinary woman in the world." 6 hours later, Chloe stood on the stage of the most prestigious auditorium in New York City, holding a crystal trophy that sparkled under the lights, with tears streaming down her cheeks as thousands of people gave her a standing ovation. She had won. Her organization had been recognized as the most impactful social innovation of the year. But as she looked out at the audience and saw Ethan standing, applauding with tears in his own eyes, she knew the real prize wasn't the trophy in her hands. The real prize was the life they had built together, a life full of genuine love, meaningful work, a beautiful family, and the certainty that when you dare to love completely, the universe conspires to give you more love than you ever dreamed possible. In her acceptance speech, Chloe spoke about the power of vulnerability, about the importance of supporting women to see themselves as whole and valuable, and about how true love doesn't change you, but gives you the courage to become who you were always meant to be. But the words that resonated most in the auditorium were the last ones. This award isn't just mine. It's for all the women who have dared to dream despite the pain, for all the men who have chosen to see women as equals and partners, and especially for my husband Ethan, who taught me that I deserve to be loved exactly as I am. That night in their hotel in New York City, Chloe and Ethan celebrated in the privacy of their room, away from the cameras and interviews. "You know what the craziest part of all this is?" Chloe said, snuggled in Ethan's arms. "What?" "That it all started because someone messed up a hotel reservation." Ethan laughed. "The best booking error in the history of hospitality. Do you think the universe planned it all? I think the universe put us in the same room, but we chose what happened next. We chose to be brave. We chose to be vulnerable. We chose to love each other despite our fears." Chloe lifted her head to look at him. "I love you, Ethan Carter. I love you for everything you are. And everything you help me to be. And I love you, Chloe Davis Carter, my partner, my best friend, the mother of my children, and the bravest woman I know." They kissed under the city lights, knowing that tomorrow they would return to Charleston, to their children, to their work, to their real life, but also knowing that they had built something so solid, so beautiful, so true, that no distance or challenge could ever break it. Because they had learned the most important secret of lasting love, that when two people commit not only to loving each other, but to growing together, they can overcome any obstacle and build a life more beautiful than either of them could have ever imagined alone. And as the lights of New York City twinkled below, Chloe and Ethan slept soundly, holding hands, dreaming of all the beautiful years yet to come. Thank you for joining Chloe and Ethan on their beautiful journey of love, growth, and second chances. Their stories remind us that true love requires vulnerability, communication, and the courage to fight for what really matters. Have you ever felt like no one saw you until someone did? If this story touched your heart, don't forget, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring love stories. Comment on which part moved you the most. Tell us which city you're watching from. Suggest new ideas for future stories. Remember, you too deserve a love that sees you, values you, and chooses you every single day. With love,